as I'm heading home from work, just in time, have a blog. What I want to blogificate today about is I had an interesting issue on one of the communicating systems that I've sort of talked shit about lately. But an issue that would maybe help somebody out that has a similar issue. And I'm talking about Amana ASZC 16 series communicating systems, although I think this will probably apply to the 18s as well. I was on a job site and we were losing communication periodically between the thermostat and the heat pump. Every now and then you'd see the heat pump shut down and go into a short cycle delay, just like any delay you would have in between cycles, except for the thermostat had never stopped calling. So the thermostat was still calling for cooling or heating because it didn't matter what cycle. And then periodically we would get a C3 code on the outdoor control board. C3 meant short cycle timer. So we would get that, and the Amana technical representative from East Coast was there, and he called the factory or the engineers or whoever people call when there's a problem. The guy in the tower with a long white beard and a lot of PDF forms. And he said it was the thermostat, and there was a degree of certainty about that. It's the thermostat. That's what it is. And it's a CTK03, which is basically a Honeywell thermostat that serves as a communicating thermostat. Now, they didn't have a CTK03, so I was going to get a brand new CTK04. Whatever. Sounds great. So I was going to fix it. Everything was going to be happy. But then the Amana guy called me in the morning. I was about to go pick up this thermostat. The thermostat everyone was so sure was the problem. He says, before you go get the thermostat, we're going to try moving the bias switches on the control board. And we need to check the DC voltage coming into the board and at the air handler with the wiring off, the data wiring. So I said, okay, that sounds good. Anything that, could solve the problem, we don't need a thermostat. Won't have to go through that if we don't need it. That's good. So I went there and checked, and I had 2.7 volts DC on number 1, I think it was, and 2.2 volts DC on number 2. This is at the air handler in the crawl space. So I put the wiring back on as I was instructed, went outside, measured the DC voltage on data 1 and 2 to common. These are all to common. And we had 1.8 volts on both of them, so they didn't match up, and they were supposed to. So we had a problem there. That's where our communication was being lost. So I was like, okay, well, that's fine. Why are they not matching up? And they seem to think it was the bias switches. There's 2 switches you can turn on and off to try to line up that voltage. I tried each switch. I tried on, off, off, on, and on, off. And none of them did the trick. So I was thinking, what could we possibly do? What could be the issue here? And then I remember that we had a 2 transformer system, 1 transformer for each board. Now, a lot of guys, and I've talked to some guys about this. Daniel Zamore, you'll know about this because we talked about powering your outdoor unit with a different transformer. And the issue comes to pass that the 2 transformers aren't really in sync. And you need to make them be in sync. Because if they're not, the voltage will be thrown off between whatever you're measuring to and common. So you can either do one of a few things. Now, something like me and Daniel were talking about, where we had just a regular old system, there was not enough wiring outside. You might take your commons to ground, and then take your commons to ground on the inside, so there's a, so to speak, common. But on the communicating system, what I did was I tied the 2 commons for each transformer, because they were in the same location. I actually put them both in the air handler and ran them outside. Tied the commons together, and all of a sudden our voltage was equal. Problem solved, and no more communication failure. Everything was working perfectly. So that's just a little tip, not just with communicating systems, with any system where you have to use 2 transformers, or you're trying to do something because there's not enough wiring. You may run into issues there where you have odd voltages, you have controls that won't work. You might have to just define a nice baseline common so that your system will be sort of on the same baseline throughout. And that's why sometimes you can use grounds, because commons go to ground anyway. Some units put them directly to ground, you can see it, like York, commercial systems. But sometimes you might need to do a little bit of engineering. But it'll all work out. And I thought that'd be a good story to share with you guys and might help somebody out there in the field. Until the next time. Guys, a little trip down memory lane here. Years ago, all these houses in the subdivision were being built. It was about 10 years ago, actually. And yours truly was the lead mechanical man here. And I was working for my father, and I was taking care of the subdivision, coordinating these houses, getting the materials and things like that, and arranging for the inspections and meeting the inspector and all that crap. And it was around 2004, 2005. And what was interesting about these, even though I haven't done so since, well, in a limited state, every single one of these units is trained. So for a year or two, it was nothing but train every day. So, and a few of these are zone systems. There was, I think, a few different floor plans. They had names, like the Ashbury, the Montclair, shit like that. I don't know what they were. But one of them was 3 stories, like this one here. And that one had a zone system, so all of those were whatever zone system we were using back then, which I guess was XEI. But it's interesting to look back on here years later. All those train spec, they're still there, which is cool. It's 10 years later, they're still looking pretty good. We're probably not servicing some of them anymore because after the houses are built, things kind of get lost in the shuffle sometimes. You have to do a good job of keeping up with your customers afterwards, and Pop didn't always do that real well. So, but just a little stroll down memory lane. So there was a time when yours truly did a whole bunch of train units, but it's been a while since that occurred. But for that time period, it was pretty much a daily event to be setting TWR, or 2 TWR, because they were all R22.